This paper was discussed by the NHS England board a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really pleased that we're bringing this into the public session as well. I don't know, Marie, do you want to kick us off?
So I want to start off by thanking the board, actually, but particularly Dido and Ian for their personal leadership on this agenda, and including actually going through the report and improving it. And I'm really proud, actually, that the NHS are leading on sort of the public sector meeting the Prime Minister's aspiration around increasing the proportion of BME. So there's a bit of pride in it, and really, really sincere thanks. There's two asks before I hand over to Habib to go through the paper. One is to, of course, I'm a chair, to think about the governance. Yes. We have an advisory group of actual leaders, Dido's on it. At the moment, we don't have a place to report into. And I think this is such an incredibly important piece of work. It'd be good if we could actually, in some way, think the advisory group could come to the joint board at least once a year, so you can hold us to account for delivery. I think that'd be really helpful. The second bit is actually NHS Improvement is the organisation in NHS that leads on culture and leadership. I mean, that's the truth, and it's going to be increasingly so. And you have done an amazing work with the Inclusive Leadership and Culture programme, and we would like to work alongside that team. One of the challenges that we have in terms of delivering this paper is around middle managers, because they're the ones that recruit, they're the ones that oversee progression and talent management. We know you have a team here that are very good at OD that we'd like to work with to actually think of some of the solutions. So that's a real gap. So, and that's the sort of second area. We've had some initial conversations, but we'd really like that to be sort of a mandated piece of work we can get our team into. Okay. So, what I want to say before handing over to Abby.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And so this paper outlines the BME leadership aspiration for the NHS. Since 2015, we've been collecting data from NHS trusts across the country, and we'll be publishing the 2018 data report shortly. What the data are telling us over that 3-year period is that there have been year-on-year improvements in certain areas, from appointments from shortlisting, entry, reduction in the entry of formal disciplinaries amongst BME staff, and access to non-mandatory training. But there are certain areas that need more concerted focus. Some of those areas, as Marie said, reflect the culture of the organisation. So the questions that are in the NHS staff survey, which we look at, for example, that focus on bullying and harassment, on victimisation, are steady. They're not improving at the rate that we want them to improve. The other area that we need to focus upon is ensuring that senior leadership of NHS organisations is reflective of the workforce. We've got an ever-increasing number of BME staff within the NHS. Since 2016, we've had over 25,000 more BME people coming into the NHS, but the rate of increase at the senior levels is not at the same pace, and that is something that we need to focus upon. As Marie said, from the data and from the national goals set by the government around leadership and senior management, making sure that it's representative of the workforce is a key aspect of the RES programme. So this timeline that we've set out in the paper is in line with that government aspiration. That 10-year aspiration is also in line with the 10-year plan as well. But we know that evidence that effectiveness of having this organisational ambition needs to focus on a number of key aspects. First, that aspiration needs to embody challenge. Secondly, it needs to be specific. And thirdly, there needs to be some level of accountability around that. Regarding those first 2 points in the paper, we've set out what the aspiration may be like for NHS trusts and for CCGs. At the same time, we know that individual organisations will be better placed in terms of knowing what their workforce composition and their circumstances are like. We, as the NHS Workforce Race Equality Standard team, will be able to support organisations with that aspiration. Secondly, we know also that having policy levers in place is critical for this. The RES way back in 2015, was placed into the NHS standard contract, into the CCG improvement and insurance framework, and within the CQC well-led domain. We know that the single oversight framework is a key lever for us as well. We would recommend that it goes within that policy lever as well. At the same time, we know that we need organisations and people to do this because they want to, and not just because they have to as a result of regulation and assurance. And that brings me on to Marie's point, where we need to also focus on cultural change and cultural transformation to make sure that organisations are ready for the increased number of BME staff that we want to see and to reach that aspirational goal. The final point, I guess, Chair, is that as organisations in our own right, the arm's length bodies need to be modelling this aspiration themselves.
Definitely.
And so we as a team would be happy, as we are doing now, to support the national arm's length bodies with this aspiration for their own workforces as well.
Fantastic. Okay, open it up. Walt?
I mean, thank you for the report, and great news that we're making some progress on this. But one of the things that struck me as sort of missing, and maybe because I'm sort of very new to this, is that ordinarily in other sectors, you make the case for diversity in a wider sense as being a positive because it's good business. And I didn't quite feel that was. This is more regulation and stick than actually this makes sense and is really smart.
Yeah,
I just wanted to comment on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, for the last 3 years, we've been focusing on the why, and we've commissioned a number of pieces of work that outline the business case, as well as a patient outcomes case for this as well. And we know that exists. So the relationship between staff and engagement staff satisfaction and patient outcomes is absolutely critical to this agenda. And in fact, the work that people such as Professor Michael West and Professor Jeremy Dawson have done around that highlights that particular point. The way an organisation treats its BME staff is a good barometer for the overall culture within the workforce, and that has been proven. And in fact, the RES data is absolutely showing that. So organisations such as North East London Foundation Trust, for example, are showing that whereby using the RES and implementing the RES and making improvements for their BME staff, they're also making improvements for the whole of the workforce. So their data for not just the BME staff, but for all of their workforce, in terms of discrimination, in terms of harassment, etc., is better than the data for any of their peer organisations. So the why as to that, we will always amplify that. But I think we also need to move now from the why to the how as well, and support organisations to do that. And of course, both are linked.
Well, my pushback slightly on this would be, I think you need to do both in parallel. I think you cannot leave one behind.
Yes.
And the danger is it feels like it's being left behind as you move towards this other phase. And to keep reinforcing, you can never keep saying enough, this is good business, this is good business, to help.
Isn't it? Actually, that's a message we need to hear as much as the RES team. The way in which we as NHS Improvement and NHS England implement this strategy has to be continuing to engage on the why as well as setting out the how. We have to keep explaining why that this is genuinely the best way to deliver better care for patients and a better working environment for our staff.
And just on that note, Chair, that's why we say the operational interventions are absolutely critical for this, but also the transformational cultural change that we want to see is absolutely critical, and both are linked. And we always say that they're two sides of the same coin, and we need to focus on both at the same time. So I absolutely take your point.
Yeah. Anyone else? Cassie?
Just, I completely agree with that. I think we've really got to focus on that. But I think we should be ever critical of ourselves and ourselves as leaders and the leaders of our organisations here, because however much progress we appear to be making at some level, until we make that progress at the very senior leadership, we will struggle, I think, because we're not. And not just us, but in our organisations, we are not demonstrating sufficient, absolute focus on this. And there is something about the pipeline, and we were talking a earlier about the Leadership Academy, and there feels as though there's maybe an opportunity coming up when all that happens to really get that pipeline, because you are stuck if nobody applies who is from a diverse background, you're kind of stuck. You either don't appoint or you end up there. But we're going to have to work harder on this, because it's we've been talking about it for years, and it's just unacceptable, I think, that we're still here. But we are where we are. I think it's just a commitment to move forward, but to focus on why it's good for health, why it's good for the business, why it's good for patients feels like the best way into a difficult area, really.
And I think internally, if you look at the raft of senior team appointments that we announced yesterday, we have not been able to do as well as we would have wanted to in appointing a diverse leadership team. Yeah. We have worked very hard at following the suggestions and guidance in this strategy. So we've had diverse panels. Marie's been extremely helpful and sat on a number of them with us. We've made batch appointments. We've been very careful in our language in all of the applications, and we've asked every single person who's applied for a national or a regional director job what their personal track record of delivering on diversity and inclusion has been and what they would bring to the job. So actually we've had probably about 50 answers, which in and of itself has been very interesting to learn more of what we can do. But we haven't actually succeeded in making diverse enough appointments, and we need to call that out and be honest about it. We do. And I think that's why I think this isn't just exhorting people to try harder. I recognise across the whole country people are trying quite hard, but we're not succeeding, and we've got to work together at understanding why and learn from each step. So I think, Ian, one of the things we need to do is we need to set our own targets as per this strategy for NHS improvement and actually NHS England, and bring that back to the board on where in 3 years' time we think we should be and what we're going to do, which parts of this strategy we should focus on internally.
Can I pick up on that? I think that's absolutely critical, because we must become the change we want to see is not a bad place to start. Yeah. And experience in other sectors. I think your point about the middle management is absolutely critical. And it's attitudinal and behavioural as much as it is technical. In fact, I don't think it really is technical. And I think but there are critical steps around sort of diverse panels, around the language you use, around that. But I also think it's about working hard. So I do believe that when we are looking at shortlists, etc., and lists, actually we have to just work really hard, and we have to force ourselves to not just look at who's the best person to do the job now, but who can be developed to be the best person in that job in 1 to 2 years, and what support do we need to put in place, because some of this is also about giving opportunity and taking a bit of risk. And that's where I think it comes down to working hard with the middle management. So I think, as well as, and I think therefore we do need as an organisation to set ourselves some targets, to put in place some interventions, to really push hard to do it, because we will be a better organisation by doing that on multiple diversity, not just in BME or in gender or in sexual orientation, whatever. We'll be a better organisation, and there's lots of learnings out there. But this is hard. No organisation does this well. That would be my observation. We certainly don't in my other businesses.
Ruth first and then back.
Thank you very much, and I just want to say thank you to the RES team, because you've worked really hard, you've been very vocal, and you've also celebrated diversity, and using the events to celebrate it has raised the profile. So I just want to say thank you to the RES team, because you've worked really hard on this. I know from my own team we're not diverse, and my current direct reports are not diverse at all, and in my new role we'll need to work that through. But there is some hope. There is some hope coming through. So the aspiring directors of nursing, the aspiring deputy directors of nursing, there is a good third of the people aspiring to be directors, aspiring to be deputy directors, that are from a BME background. So there is some hope. Right. The next bit we need to do is to make it reality, to support these people, and also to support them when they do become directors and when they do become aspiring deputy directors, so that they are successful. We'll need to do that. But we've got clinical fellows. I've got, out of the 7 clinical fellows, I've got 3 of them are from BME backgrounds. So we're starting to see some come through. but we need to turbocharge it.
Yeah.
And I give my personal commitment to do that with the rest team.
That's a lovely segue into what I'm about to say, actually, the turbocharging. We have the tool. It's to echo Kathy's point, it's Leadership Academy. Because the role modelling at the very top is what is the most visible sign. And until we change and shift that, nothing much is going to happen. The way to do that is to use that new tool as that comes across and make a definite focus on saying that Leadership Academy is the arm which is going to make this happen for us.
Yeah.
When you take it on board, a real target, and for us to look and see how that's delivering against that,
Yeah.
I think is a practical way of
I think that's a
achieving
very
change.
good action.
It's the support is just brilliant. I would just say a little bit more about that in terms of there is Leadership Academy, and I agree about developing the leaders, but you have to have organisations that they come back to, that, as Ruth was saying, that supports them. So that whole piece about building inclusive cultures, which is, it's not really, talent management and all that, I think has to be with the organisation. And it is your responsibility too, actually. And leadership is a key part of that. There's a wider systematic approach, I think, which you have been working on actually with Mike West and co. And that's one of the things as well we've been trying to say to the system. Stop wasting your money on lots of consultants, because you can guarantee when the press release comes out about this, lots of people will be running. Actually, we have the expertise in-house. You have a team here, actually, based on evidence best practice. And that's what we need to be saying to the system. You need to do it in a systematic way. And you can't just do some unconscious bias training or send someone off for some training who then comes back to an organisation that's not ready to receive and support. So I think you're right. It's about the whole though.
Ian.
Yeah, just to sort of sum up my perspective on this, I think thanks both of you for coming and talking to us today. I think there is massive progress here, but I think, around this table we need to also recognise that we have a big role in this in terms of ourselves and what we say and do. And my sense, and I said this to Yvonne previously, is that, frankly, whether it's the Leadership Academy, our oversight of trusts, or our own development of our own organisational culture, people and objectives, I think we have to raise our game. We haven't, I think, perhaps had as much to say about this in the past as we need to going forward. It's a key component of delivering effective healthcare to our patients. And so I'd just like to sort of echo what Ruth said, that I think this is something that NHSI, as NHSI, is really committed to. And I'd like to take on the challenge that Dido set and come back to a future board with our own objectives for becoming more representative. And so I'm happy to accept that challenge. It's very important.
Fantastic. Well, I think we can say now this is formally approved by both boards of NHS England and NHS Improvement. We will launch it out to the system as fast as we can. I know every trust will then get their own data and be challenged as they do their planning for 1920 to set out what their targets and action plan is going to be. And I think that is the next turbocharging of this journey.
Along with us.
Yeah, along with us.
And
Well
just
done.
to confirm, the SARG will come through to, they'll be held to account by
Yes.
the joint board.
I
Yes.
think that we should formally have this come to our joint people committee. So that if you're comfortable with that, Andrew, as chair, I think that's the natural place for it to be overseen.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Fantastic.
very much.
Well done, everybody.
Thank you.